Hello everyone, my name is Jason Brown. I'm an attorney down here in Los Angeles with the Murphy Law Group, and I've been studying ObamaCare for quite a long time. When I ask my clients, hey, what's the most important thing to you? Most of the time, what they say is the employer mandate. Now, for a while now, many of my clients have been trying to avoid this whole thing, like an ostrich, putting the head in the sand and not really paying as much attention as they should, hoping maybe Romney gets elected or something like that. Others, like a little puppy, are happy with the way things are and they don't want to change. But unfortunately, Obamacare is here to stay and the employer mandate is something we need to hit head on. And what's the type of animal that would be good for that? This guy, the honey badger. We have a 3-step plan that you can use to attack with diligence, never back down, and also grow and conquer the employer mandate that is scaring us all at this time. There's no reason to be afraid of it. It's something that we can deal with and grow with and we can incorporate into our business models. Remember, this is just a math equation. To get this by the Supreme Court, this had to be given to the IRS. So it's a tax issue, just like any other. And there's no reason to be afraid of it. The most important thing to remember, though, is this is based on employee numbers. So you need to calculate the number of employees that you have. It sounds like an easy question, but it's not. First, you have to figure out how many full-time employees you have. Now that's actually quite easy. If you have an employee that's great, an employee that works more than 30 hours a week, that's going to be a full-time employee. Not 40. Under Obamacare, it is 30, and remember that. But if they're in that category, categorize them as a full-time employee and have that list. The more interesting issue is the full-time equivalent. The full-time equivalent is a part-time employee that is considered a full-time when you lump all their hours together. The way that you calculate that is you put all of the hours of all of your other employees and divide by 120. That will give you your number for full-time equivalents. Add them together and you get the number of employees under Obamacare. In this example that I've given you, it's about 12 full-time and 42 part-time full-time equivalents. What that equals is 54. That means that Obamacare and the employer mandate is going to apply to you. So, some of my clients don't stop at that. Okay, they want to know more. They want to say, hey, sometimes I have 52, sometimes I have 48, sometimes I have 64. Turns out, you look back and you see a 6-month continuous period in the previous year. You can also use the entire year, but remember, Obamacare goes into effect on January 1, 2014, which means that we're already into that critical year in which you're measuring your FTEs. So I'd suggest use the 6-month calculation. June to November, July to December, something like that. Take an average of that time, and then you'll know whether you're over that 50 threshold. Now, in our industry, in the home care industry, we have some very interesting labor issues. For instance, there's the live-in issue. Now, that's a hornet's nest of legal issues, and we all know that. Chances are, you're going to have your laws in place, and you're going to need to err on the side of caution, which means 8 hours of sleep, 16 hours of labor. Could be more, but that's where you should make your rule and go from there. We also have the issue of variable employees. One of my clients, and this is a client I do a lot of work with, has caregivers that sometimes work 40 hours and sometimes work 10. And they ask me, they say, well, is that full-time or not? And I say, well, back in the fall when I gave a series of lectures, I didn't know the answer to that question. But just weeks ago, the IRS told us the answer to that question. It's complicated, but it can be done. And you can take those variable employees and turn them into part-time employees. And that's critical for calculating the penalties, as you'll see next. Also, in our industry, we take some workers from other agencies. So it's not just our employees. We say, my clients tell me, hey, but they're working for another person. Why do I have to care about providing them with health insurance? Well, be careful. Always err on the side of caution. If they do perform work for you, count their labor toward the FTE and count their labor towards your calculation of your employees. Now that's step one. You're going to attack with diligence. You're going to know what's going on in the industry, you're going to know what's going on with your company, you're going to know what the law says, and then you're going to attack it. Okay? But what's going to happen is the law is going to try to stop you, but you need to let nothing stop you. Okay? The honey badger is a great example. The honey badger can get stung by 1,000 bees, but the honey badger doesn't care about bees. It doesn't let anything stop him. That's what honey badgers do, and that's what you need to do. And you can do it now. there is much to attack right now. For example, as I said before, you can try to take those variable employees and bring them back to 29 hours. ObamaCare has often been referred to as the race to 29. Why is it the race to 29? Because if you get them below 29, not only does that bring your FTE down, there will be no penalties because they're not full-time employees. There's also this issue of independent contractors. Now that's another hornet's nest, but remember, independent contractors are not employees, full-time or part-time, so you can completely exclude them. If you have an attorney on staff, somebody comes to paint your office, you have an accountant come in, any of those independent contractors, you can just exclude them altogether. There's also this issue of the common pool. Remember, this is a math equation, so if you know how many hours it's going to be, you can just create a common pool of hours and distribute those to your caregivers. That will be a surefire way to keep yourself under the 50 FTEs. And there's also this issue of seasonal workers. So seasonal workers in our industry are those that work less than 120 hours in any given year. It's not like farm work, but we can have seasonal workers in our business, and those are things you need to take into consideration because those are not employees under Obamacare. It's just not reasonable to force you to provide health insurance for a seasonal employee. Now, most of my clients, unfortunately, are not going to be in this equation of whether to get under the 50 FTE. Most of my clients are bigger, okay? So that means that they're going to be having the employer mandate apply to them. In fact, that's why it scares them so much. So what to do? What to do for the larger honey badgers? Well, you need to calculate the tax, and I call that a tax because that's what it is. You need to either provide health insurance for your employees, and what that means is get a group plan together, figure out who you need to give it to and get it to them. Or you're going to have to take the penalty, okay? And the penalty is $2,000 times every full-time employee that you have per year, but you get a safe harbor of 30 full-time employees. So you can have 30 and still be okay. Let me give you a very concrete example. Okay, one of my clients is a larger, what I would call a larger honey badger. They have 10 employees that are full-time in their office, and they have about 60 caregivers that are out there in the field. Of those 60 caregivers in the field, approximately 50 of them are full-time. What you're looking at there is 60 full-time employees with a safe harbor of 30. That's a potentially huge penalty. So what are we doing to help them? We're trying to create a situation where we identify those caregivers that are in the field and we change their hours such that they either fall under the 29, that's the race to 29, or we create variable situations where sometimes they work full-time, sometimes they work part-time, and over a long measurement period, they turn out to be part-time. Then we're safe. Can't guarantee that we're going to bring them all the way down to zero penalty, but it's possible. But if we can just cut 10 or 15 of those caregivers into part-time, we're already going to be cutting their penalty by more than half. And that's the goal. That's why you don't let it stop you. You might get stung, but you don't let it stop you. And that's the third step. You attack with diligence, nothing stops you, and you continue to grow and adapt. What happens is you're going to create a new model, not short-term, but long-term. And when you create a long-term model, what you're going to need to do is look for things like visibility and efficiency and differentiation. Now, these are ways that you can understand everything that's going on in your organization, and the best way to do that is to have technology or a dedicated employee, somebody who understands all of the labor, somebody who understands all the different options that you have to maximize the labor that you have. And that way you have peace of mind. Because there's nothing scarier than not knowing. That's not what a honey badger would do. A honey badger would know its situation, it would attack with diligence, it would never let anything stop it, and it would continue to grow and adapt. And after all, the honey badger ultimately wins. Thank you.